1943, in the Pacific Arena. The verdant expanse yields. A young Japanese serviceman, gaunt from privation and ravaged by fever from malaria, lifts his bare hands toward the approaching American Marines. He anticipates a fatal shot. His indoctrination has instilled the belief that capture constitutes a disgrace far exceeding death itself. Instead, an American corporal extends a canteen. Water. Pure, clean water. The nascent seeds of compassion are sown in this moment of profound disorientation, a juncture where his deeply ingrained convictions begin to fracture. Throughout the vast Pacific, countless Japanese soldiers undergo a similar jarring realization. The overwhelming majority of Japanese personnel taken prisoner held the conviction that they would face brutal torture and subsequent extermination. Their superiors had painted the Americans as savage brutes. Propaganda depicted caricatures of fiendish soldiers with blood-soaked hands. The directive was clear: better to perish fighting, better to take one's own life than to endure the enemy's barbarity. However, no cruelty materializes. On the contrary, aboard hospital vessels traversing the Pacific, injured Japanese captives receive medical attention indistinguishable from that afforded to their American counterparts. American physicians meticulously set fractured limbs. Nurses diligently change dressings. Nourishing meals arrive on trays multiple times throughout the day. Individuals who had subsisted on meager portions of rice and wild vegetation now receive sustenance compliant with the Geneva Conventions, ranging from 2,000 to 2,850 calories, contingent upon their assigned duties. This quantity of food surpassed what many had seen for months on the front lines. Angel Island, California, the designated reception facility, marks the first terrestrial soil of America these captives set foot upon. Guards escort them through thorough medical assessments. No physical abuse, no torture. Instead, inoculations, delousing procedures, and the issuance of clean uniforms. One captive later chronicles in a personal journal never dispatched to his homeland, "They extend us the courtesy of treating us as if we retain our humanity. This defies all logic." The railway passage to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, unfolds the immensity of the American landscape. Endless stretches of agricultural land, metropolises that dwarf Tokyo, industrial complexes operating ceaselessly, a pervasive glow of illumination everywhere, an omnipresent sense of affluence. These men from an island nation founded upon scarcity now behold a continent that produces foodstuffs, steel, and machinery with seemingly inexhaustible capacity. March 9, 1942. Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. The inaugural Japanese prisoner arrives at this location today, Enen Kazuo Sakamaki. He is the commanding officer of a submersible captured during the attack on Pearl Harbor. Prisoner of war designation number 1. For a duration of 5 months, he resides in solitude, the sole Japanese captive within the confines of Wisconsin. Subsequently, others begin to arrive, initially hundreds, then thousands. By 1944, Camp McCoy houses precisely 2,700 Japanese prisoners. The mess hall presents the most profound revelation. Sustenance arrives, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. High-caliber victuals prepared to the palates of the prisoners by specialized culinary artists. Portions that surpass their allotments from the Imperial Army. Some are moved to tears, others refuse to partake. Firmly convinced it is poisoned or a deceptive stratagem, a guard observes their apprehension and demonstrates. He samples a portion from a prisoner's plate, sips from his cup, exhibits signs of life, smiles, makes gestures, and proceeds to eat. Gradually, hands that once clutched firearms now grasp cutlery. The taste becomes an epiphany. The sheer abundance serves as irrefutable evidence that all they had been instructed was mendacious. More nourishment, meals sourced from American farms so expansive they could envelop entire Japanese prefectures, fresh produce, protein, a greater quantity of sustenance on a single day's ration than many prisoners had encountered in a week on the front lines. Camp records indicate prisoners expressed astonishment at the superior quality. Stomachs, having contracted from years of near starvation, struggled to process these generous portions. Certain prisoners experienced gastric distress due to excessive consumption in a short period. American medical personnel address these ailments as well, with gentle prescriptions and counsel on mindful eating. The commissary at Camp McCoy stocks items that appear almost fantastical: confections, chocolate, chewing gum, and tobacco products in quantities that exceed a month's allotment for Japanese officers. Tobacco, low-alcohol beer, and light wine, all accessible for acquisition utilizing remuneration earned from voluntary labor. Prisoners receive 80 cents per diem. Officers are allocated between $15 and $35 monthly in camp script, with candy bars priced at 10 cents and Coca-Cola at 5 cents. Wages permit the purchase of genuine luxuries, items that in Japan would necessitate connections, influence, or exist solely as faded pre-war recollections. Coca-Cola arrives at the commissary, priced at 5 cents per bottle, the identical cost as elsewhere in America. The effervescent dark liquid perplexes prisoners who had never encountered carbonated beverages. Sweet, chilled, bubbling. The initial sip prompts coughing due to the carbonation. The second sip elicits wonder. One prisoner articulates this sentiment in his journal. This beverage possesses a flavor that suggests it originates from another realm, a world devoid of conflict, devoid of hunger. The psychological ramifications become evident within weeks. Prisoners who arrived with hollowed eyes and a profound silence begin to smile, to engage in jesting, to participate in games of baseball within the recreation yard. American guards occasionally join these contests. Laughter transcends the linguistic divide. A home run achieved by a prisoner elicits cheers from both sides of the enclosure. The Japanese sector of Camp McCoy evolves beyond its designation as a mere detention facility. Prisoners, with the commandant's consent, cultivate traditional gardens. They erect a Buddhist shrine utilizing materials provided by the camp administration. The YMCA furnishes incense for religious observances. They receive vibrantly colored crepe paper and slender wire to fashion artificial floral arrangements in traditional styles. They construct theatrical stages and present as many as 3 Japanese dramas each month, complete with self-made costumes and backdrops. Excursions to the local cinema on a weekly basis become a regular occurrence. Prisoners, under minimal escort, view American motion pictures, Hollywood musicals, westerns. The casual opulence depicted on screen mirrors their lived reality within the camp. Characters consume Coca-Cola as if it were water. Residences are equipped with electric lighting, running water, and multiple chambers. This is not propaganda. This is commonplace existence. The prisoners exhibit exemplary conduct during these excursions, never attempting an escape. This behavior surprises War Department officials, yet the notion of escape holds no logical appeal. To where would they abscond? Back to a losing conflict, back to starvation and certain demise. The work assignments illuminate America's industrial prowess. Prisoners assigned to canning factories observe assembly lines that process tons of produce per hour. Machinery performs the labor of hundreds of individuals. Food items are meticulously sorted by size and quality. Produce deemed imperfect due to minor blemishes is allocated for animal feed. America discards foodstuffs that could sustain entire Japanese villages. Certain work crews contribute their labor to Wisconsin farms. Dairy operations where individual farms yield more milk than entire Japanese prefectures. Cheese manufacturing plants that discard more dairy byproducts and spillage than most Japanese cities consume monthly. The prisoners begin to comprehend. Japan cannot prevail in this war. Japan never possessed the capacity to win this conflict. The numerical data is incontrovertible. Although many Japanese prisoners decline work assignments on principle, believing such endeavors would abet the adversary, the Geneva Conventions safeguard their right to refuse. They receive identical treatment irrespective of their decision. American guards adopt a relaxed demeanor around the prisoners. At certain work sites, guards lay aside their rifles and recline for a nap. Prisoners rouse them upon the approach of officers. Trust gradually supplants suspicion. The divergence from their preconceived expectations becomes absolute. Letters to their families remain largely unwritten, not due to camp restrictions. Prisoners are permitted to correspond, to dispatch mail through the Red Cross, yet Japanese soldiers carry a profound sense of shame regarding their capture. It is preferable for their families to believe they died with honor than to be alive in enemy hands. Silence is preferable to the admission of survival. Nevertheless, some do commit their thoughts to paper. Private correspondence, personal diaries, documents concealed and preserved. One prisoner pens, "I cannot transmit this to my mother. She would find it inconceivable that enemy combatants receive such treatment. She would surmise that I have lost my faculties or have brought dishonor upon the family with falsehoods. If America treats its adversaries with such magnanimity, what provisions does America extend to its allies? If American prisoners are nourished according to Geneva standards, what sustenance do American soldiers consume? If enemy encampments possess an abundance, what exists within American civilian society? The logical conclusion becomes inescapable. Japan is engaged in conflict with a nation so affluent that it treats captured enemies with greater consideration than Japan itself bestows upon its own troops. News emanating from the Pacific provides corroboration. Battle after battle is lost. Islands are recaptured. The tide has irrevocably turned. Prisoners at Camp McCoy receive this intelligence and nod in agreement. They foresaw this outcome. They witnessed it in the commissary. They observed it in the waist. They perceived it in the guards who possessed the latitude for kindness. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Allied captives in Japanese internment camps confront a starkly different reality. Mortality rates ranging from 27 to 40%, resulting in 35,500 deaths among 132,000 Western Allied prisoners. This figure represents a fatality rate 7 to 10 times higher than that observed in German camps. Systematic starvation led American POWs to experience an average weight loss of 61 pounds, and routine beatings affected 90% of American prisoners. The Bataan Death March, the Burma-Siam Railway, with its 40% mortality rate, and hell ships where 22,000 prisoners perished in unmarked cargo holds. Japan had signed, but never ratified, the Geneva Conventions. In practice, It systematically violated both Geneva and Hague regulations, despite stating its intention to adhere to these standards. The promise proved entirely hollow. The advent of spring in 1945 brings different tidings. Germany surrenders. The European conflict concludes. America's industrial might now directs its full force exclusively toward Japan. Prisoners at McCoy comprehend what their families in Japan cannot. The nation that provided them with adequate sustenance and medical care is now concentrating its entire attention westward. This signifies either annihilation or capitulation. No third alternative exists. August 1945. 2 atomic bombs are deployed. Japan surrenders. The war concludes. Prisoners at Camp McCoy receive the news with a complex admixture of emotions. Relief that the bloodshed has ceased, sorrow for fallen comrades and a devastated homeland, guilt for their survival while others perished, but also comprehension, an understanding forged through adequate provisions and medical attention, an understanding born from kindness where harshness was anticipated. Repatriation commences in 1946 and continues through 1947 and 1948. The United States retains nearly 70,000 POWs until late 1946 for the dismantling of military installations. British authorities hold prisoners until October 1947. Soviet repatriation extends into the 1950s. Certain prisoners do not return for decades. Japanese captives from American facilities board vessels bound for Japan. They carry with them knowledge that will largely remain unspoken. They return to ruined cities, incinerated towns, families afflicted by hunger, and they bear accounts that they find difficult to articulate. Narratives concerning American treatment, accounts of sufficient food and medical care, stories of guards who evolved into friends, tales of a nation capable of extending compassion even to its adversaries. Owing to the profound shame associated with surrender, few Japanese POWs author memoirs following the war. This silence becomes absolute. Unlike prisoners held by the Soviets who returned having been radicalized towards communism, prisoners from Western camps simply reintegrated into post-war Japanese society. Their experiences remain private, their insights unspoken, yet the tangible evidence persists. The fact that prisoners survived Western captivity at rates exceeding 96%. The fact that Geneva Convention standards were consistently maintained throughout their internment. The fact that treatment remained humane irrespective of the absence of reciprocal conduct. Decades later, in infrequent interviews, former prisoners recount their experiences at Camp McCoy. Many describe the adequate sustenance and medical care as a pivotal juncture. The moment at which they grasped that the war was irrevocably lost, not from military reports or propaganda, but from the simple reality that their adversaries received treatment their own officers had never provided. One former prisoner, interviewed in 1983, states, "I anticipated death and received medical attention. I expected torture and was administered vaccinations. I braced for starvation and was provided with ample rations. Every tenet I held regarding America was erroneous. Everything I believed about my own country was a fabrication." Former Camp McCoy prisoners report being exceptionally satisfied with their treatment during exit interviews. They characterize it as exemplary, far removed from the depiction of suffering, torment, and neglect disseminated by the Japanese government. These are the words drawn directly from official War Department documents. The Japanese POW experience within American internment facilities stands as history's understated testament. Approximately 5,000 Japanese prisoners journeyed across the Pacific to the continental United States, a modest number compared to German POWs, a small contingent due to the Japanese military culture's discouragement of surrender. A limited presence because the majority of captured Japanese were transferred to Australia and New Zealand after September 1942. Men who anticipated their demise encountered humanity. Men who expected starvation received adherence to Geneva Convention standards. Men who braced for torture experienced medical care identical to that provided to American servicemen. And in discovering these realities, they carried forth knowledge they could barely articulate. The treatment at facilities such as McCoy demonstrated what the destructive force of bombs and battleships could not convey, that Western nations uphold ethical standards even in the absence of reciprocity, that compassion persevered even amidst warfare, that true strength encompassed the capacity for clemency. While post-war tribunals resulted in 984 executions and 3,419 imprisonments of Japanese personnel for abuses committed against POWs, the American treatment of Japanese prisoners remained consistent with international legal obligations. The 5-cent Coca-Cola, the adequate daily rations, the medical care, and inoculations. These became the quiet truths these prisoners carried, truths that remained largely unexpressed due to cultural stigma, truths that illustrated how nations elect to conduct warfare.